all of these. Like I said, we'll do a second thicker layer of the darker glaze over top of it, and we should get, there's me hitting the camera, some pretty blues in theory. Maybe. My hand is just in the way all of the time. Yuck. Yeah. It is damp outside. Make sure I'm actually hitting the sides there. It's legitimately difficult to tell which ones I've done. Hi, Tutor. Wolf big stretch. All right, you can go out for a little bit. But only if you lay on that. You are not allowed to lay on the wood. Too hot. Too hot. I don't care. I like the hot. He really does just like being hot. He loves the sun. A couple days ago, like, I usually put a towel out on the porch for him to lay on, like in the sun. And usually the towel ends up like staying out there until it's later, and I'll bring it back in, like the sun had moved off and he's been inside or whatever, whenever I go to pick it up. Anyway, it was like, it was in the shade still, and he decided he wanted to go out and just nap in the heat, like not even in the sun, just napping out in 80 some degree weather, like hot and humid and gross. For you specifically? It's a gift card. Do you want some of the dehydrated beef liver? Nope. I just have a bunch of different colors of lipstick. You get to choose which one to put on. Most of the lipsticks I imagine will burn off. Even if I did kiss it, I don't think, it depends on the colorants in some of them, but most of them I think would burn off. Yeah, likely not. I mean, most things don't survive over 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, so. Considering I'm painting what amounts to ground rocks onto here to melt them. Wax and glaze over it. That's possible. Alright, we've got 3 more of these guys. And we do it all again. This is really the one downside of brushing on glazes is, man, it takes forever. Like if I had poured the interiors of these, the insides would have gone much faster. The exteriors, pouring them would still be difficult because, like I was telling Amy Jo before, because I would pour them this direction, right? Which means this whole area underneath the handle isn't going to get hit if I pour it. Spraying would be a much faster option, right? The problem is I don't have a spray booth. I don't have the right ventilation for it. And like the whole thing. Dripped a little bit there. But spraying would probably be the fastest way to accomplish these, especially with the handles. That's actually how I did the first ones. Little column A, little column B. It's mostly about thickness of application that's going to change the way it looks. So if I brushed things on too thin, you might see some brush marks. But Thanks for lurk, Zach. But you're not going to see brush marks when it's fired usually, because specifically in this case you wouldn't. It's going to melt too much to see brush marks. Brushing, so there are pros and cons to all of the different methods, right? And the methods include dipping or pouring. Those kind of go together, right? Dipping and or pouring, you're using the same glaze. It's the same thickness of glaze, and it's coming out of a bucket, right? Spraying, which you can use the same glaze for spraying for the most part as you can for dipping or pouring. And then brush on glazes, which is a different thickness, and for brushing glazes, they generally have the addition of some suspension agents to help keep them in suspension for brushing purposes. And they all have different pros and cons. So the biggest difference, for the most part, not that you can't buy commercial dipping glazes, I do, but largely if you are dipping and pouring your glazes, you are most of the time making your own glazes from the glaze materials, and that is significantly cheaper than purchasing pints of glaze that are pre-made or dipping glazes that are pre-made. Making your own glazes will always be cheaper. The downside to that is that you have to store all of the glaze materials in order to make them. And if you're making large enough quantities of glazes, say in 5-gallon buckets, you need the ability to be able to store those 5-gallon buckets as well. Whereas if you have a bunch of brush-on glazes, you can have, 30 pints, and they take up a much smaller amount of space. Each of the things offers a different level of control. Certainly dipping and pouring, you can't get quite as much control of where glaze is going necessarily. Dipping is great for if you need a nice even layer all over something. Pouring is great for a couple of swooshy designs, and that's about it, right? Spraying, downside to spraying, of course, is you need a whole spray booth with ventilation to it. You have to wear a respirator. You need all of the glazes. Like I said, you can mix them the same way as you would a dipping or pouring glaze, but you definitely have to make sure you're sieving them quite a bit so that your spray gun doesn't get clogged. But spraying gives you a lot of control over, like if you're trying to gradient things or anything like that. You can get a nice even coat with spraying all over. And it's quick. It's very quick. The biggest issue with spraying is that the spray booth and ventilation takes up a lot of space. Brushing, you can get very precise with your glaze application. That goes with ceramics in general, like glaze making. Or goes with what? Spray options. Yeah. I mean, you certainly need proper ventilation because you're basically aerating uh, particulate, particulate. Um, you're aerating things like silica and other colorants that you really shouldn't be inhaling. All of those fun things that you can't spray without having a vent hood, essentially. Having a spray booth that traps all of that and keeps you safe. And even then you should be wearing a respirator when you're doing it. Like a legit respirator. So it's like the community studio where I fire has a spray booth and spray gun. Is it top of the line? No, um, but they have the ability, like working there, you have the ability to use that. Um, but it takes up a lot of space. Like the spray booth is probably as large, if not larger, than like this shelving unit wide. It's larger than that, I would say. But it takes up probably as much space as that, as my shelves over there. So like it takes up a lot of space. And I don't have a lot of space. And that's part of why a lot of my glazes are brush on. The other part is I'm still figuring out which glazes I like and that kind of thing. I have a small amount of space underneath this table where I can house some dipping glazes, some buckets. I have like 2-gallon buckets rather than 5-gallon buckets. But I'm limited, right? So when doing 11 bowls, it takes me a lot longer because I'm brushing a lot of them. Now, I have just gotten these 2 glazes in dippable format. So that hopefully in the future, if I do a lot of these pieces, I can just dip them and have it go much faster. That being said, switching from brushing a glaze on to using it in a dipping format will take a little bit of time to kind of dial that in because thicknesses are different and stuff like that. Morning, green bean. We're doing pretty all right. It's hot as fuck here. The weather is disgusting. Yeah. It's so humid. But other than that, we're trucking along. Oh yeah, for sure, Mr. Magikarp. I'm happy to talk pottery stuff basically all of the time. And of course, some of it's just a preference. But I think for most people, there are a lot of... What am I trying to say? Like, your space dictates what you can do a lot, and um, your finances dictate what you can do a lot, which is kind of most things, right? But yeah, it can be. For me, I do wish I had the ability to dip these because I could get more stuff done, you know? But it is what it is. Yeah, we're moving right along. Main reason I wish I could dip all of these is so after this is the last one for this coat. So I've gone through all of this and now I need to go back over all of them again. Not with this one, but with another glaze color. So it's a little bit like, were I able to dip them right? I guess what I could have done, dipping wise, I'm just thinking, if I had painted on one layer on the outside of this, or poured it, I guess, but painted it on, I could then dip the whole piece in the darker glaze because it's on the inside as well. That's something to consider for the future. Came with a friend of his, cooked dinner, then died on the couch. Nice. Yeah, so in the future, if I just coat the outside in this color first, then I can dip the whole thing in the other color and have it be kind of a one and done deal. That's big brain me. Let's make sure I did all of them. Much snot right now? Are you sick? Is that why you have much snot? Are you ill? That is a fitting oh no. Oh right, Dorothy was sick. You're right. Boo. That stinks. All right, I guess our question here is, I think the smarter use of my time is going to be to maybe roll out some, I don't know that, not unless I move everything, and then I have to move everything back. Gross. I don't like that. I'm just trying to debate. Welcome in, Kara. Do I keep glazing? Because now that I've glazed multiple layers on these, it's going to take longer for this second layer to dry, which is going to be bad. Or do I try and make some cookies really quickly? Ugh, I'm loath to make cookies out of fresh clay, but why are we mad at Egbert? Kara Breeze? All right. He'll trash talk just about anything. I'm debating. It would be smart of me to make cookies right now. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move these guys out of my way and make cookies for this last little bit. So that I can take them to the studio and get them fired and such. These will still need one more heavy coat on them, but because I've put 2 coats on the inside and 1 coat on the outside of these pots, the last coat that I'm going to be putting on them is going to take 9,000 years to dry. And not 9,000 years, it's just going to dry slower, which means moving them around is going to be a pain. So if I wait until tomorrow, say, to get another coat on here, or I guess I could just wait until Tuesday since there's fucking no rush now because I need to get the cookies done. You may go out for like 5 minutes at most, sir.